So welcome everyone who has just recently joined. We're just about to get started. If you can introduce yourself in the chat, that would be great. Just let us know which organization that you're visiting from and where you're from. I think we're good to go. Trevor, we've got 44 in now.
Well, thanks for taking some time to join us today, this evening. We're pleased to have you all with us. The time is now 4:02, so I'll ask that the annual general meeting of the members of the Plant Protein Alliance of Alberta Limited please come to order. My name is Trevor Lington. I'm the Vice Chair of the PPAA Board, and it's my pleasure to act as Chair for this evening's activities. And I very much appreciate you all being here and participating in our AGM, and also for your patience with all things online. Like many organizations, we've had to adjust to the realities of COVID. I would ask that if you haven't done so already, please to mute your microphone, and if you unmute only if you wish to speak. That'll just help cut down on some of the background noise and help us manage some of the sound levels. So we appreciate your patience with us on that. As we get started, I'm going to appoint Shannon Snaden to act as our recording secretary of this meeting, and I'll appoint Scott Exner and Nina Ekong to act as scrutineers. As was noted in the letter that was sent with the notice of meeting, as I've already mentioned, COVID-19 has impacted how board meetings are being held this year. I want you to know that the PPAA board did consider a number of different options, particularly to allow for electronic voting, but we were very cognizant of the costs of many of those platforms. So to allow for remote participation and to manage the cost this year, all of our voting is actually going to be done by proxy. We've collected the proxies that were submitted prior to the meeting. I don't want that to imply that you can't ask questions. We certainly invite you to be active and ask lots of questions during the meeting, either through speaking up or certainly indicating in the chat function. Shannon's going to be monitoring that for us and flagging anybody that has any questions. But given the costs of setting up a proper and legally appropriate remote voting system, we have, however, decided that only proxies will be counted towards the votes for this evening. So this notice of meeting, the notice of this meeting was emailed to members on October the 14th of 2020. And I will certainly attach a declaration to that effect to the minutes of the meeting. Those will be annexed and attached there too. So in order to officially begin, I'll ask the scrutineers to present the report on attendance. I'll hand that to Scott, if you would.
Thanks, Trevor. The quorum under Section 23 of the corporation's bylaws is 5% of the members entitled to vote at the meeting. Since there are 56 Class A members, the number needed for quorum is 3, and that quorum has been met between the proxies and the Class A members participating on this Zoom meeting.
Thank you for that, Scott. I declare that a quorum is present and that the meeting is properly constituted for the transaction of business today. Item number 4 on our agenda is the minutes of the last annual meeting. So those minutes were distributed along with that notice of meeting. One small error was noted after the minutes were emailed out. I actually was inadvertently listed as being present last year, and I was not. So let that be a lesson to you. If you missed the AGM last year, you end up as chair this year. So that's just something for everyone to be cognizant of. But other than that edit, are there any other additions or deletions to the minutes from our last AGM? I see no hands, I see no comments. So the motion will appear on the screen here momentarily. And if I could have somebody either in the chat function or verbally indicate that they would be willing to move that.
Trevor, it's Sandra Morocco. I so move that the minutes from the last annual meeting be amended as approved.
Thank you for that, Sandra. Could I get a second to the motion, either again in the chat or verbally? Could I get a seconder? Oh, thank you, Scott. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask that the scrutineers provide a vote or provide the results of the proxy vote.
I confirm that the resolution to approve the minutes as amended has been passed.
Perfect. Thank you, Scott. We'll now move on to the next item of business, which is the receipt by the members of our financial statements for the corporation Our period ended May 31st of 2020. So I will confirm that the financial statements have been reviewed and approved by the corporation's board of directors. I'd now like to call upon Crystal Cardinal of MNP to discuss the financial statements and provide her report. And I'll just say, first of all, thank you, Crystal, for your support and particularly the work of MNP as well with our organization from day one, quite frankly. Very much appreciated.
Thank you, Trevor. I'm excited to be here and welcome to everyone that is a new member. I know looking at the list, there was quite a few members that we hadn't seen before last year when we worked on this review engagement. So welcome. I'm sure you'll have a great time here. It's been wonderful for me and my team. We've been with, like Trevor said, with you guys since the very beginning. So I would like to, I think everyone got a copy of the financial statements in the package sent out. Is that correct, Trevor?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I would like to draw your attention to the first page after the title page of the financial statements. It just goes over the management's responsibility to have clear distinction of what the members, the board members and management within the Protein Alliance of Alberta, what their roles are compared to what MNP's roles are. So in the current year, as well as the prior year, we have prepared a review engagement report on the financial statements. We have provided a reasonable level of assurance in approving that the numbers are appropriate. If you go to page 3 of the financial statements, you can see that we have our conclusion, and based on our review, nothing has come to our attention that causes us to believe that the financial statements do not present fairly in all material respects the financial position. So that means that we have done our review of everything that went on within the organization, and we found that they were correct in accordance with the Canadian accounting standards for nonprofit organizations. The next page is the statement of financial position. So this is a point in time as at year end. This is where the organization was sitting. As you can see, the cash has decreased significantly in comparison to May 31st, 2019. This was as expected. In 2018 and 2019, grants were given for the organization to use on their expenditures as per the budgeted. These were now used in the 2020 fiscal year end. Therefore, there was a large decrease in cash. This was completely as expected within our reasons. We'll draw your attention to the grant receivable for $250,000. On May 11th, 2020, another grant was granted by the Majesty, the Queen and Right of Alberta for $250,000. So this had not yet been received as at May 31st, 2020. However, the contract was finalized. Therefore, we did pick it up to be received in the fiscal year end of 2021. Total assets for the organization was just shy of $300,000. As you can see, the liabilities had a decrease in the current year. The majority of that was the deferred contributions. So that is the, we'll get to that in the note, but that is the amounts that are to be spent as per the grant agreement. So that because we used up one of the grants or two of the grants and now only have one remaining, that one had a decrease in the current year. The unrestricted net excess of net assets, so the additional funds left over was $38,000 this year in comparison to the deficit last year of $37,000. The next page is the statement of operations and the changes in net assets. As you can see, grant revenue had a minor increase in comparison to the 2019 year end. We'll go over that in note 5. Memberships had a large increase. So that would be another thing that is evident as the number of people attending the meeting today. Memberships had a large increase just as last year was the first year. Now after that, a lot of people have known the benefits of being involved with PPAA. Therefore, we saw that that increase as well as the sponsorships corresponded with that. Our total expenditures have decreased this year. Obviously, COVID hit in March of 2020. So there were a month and a half, about 2 months of the organization's fiscal year end that were impacted by COVID. But the organization reacted quickly. And as you can see, a lot of the expenses were cut down. So rather than spending excess money, as soon as kind of the pandemic hit, expenses were lowered in order to help save that cash. And that is what created the $75,000 excess of revenue over expenses this year. That was applied against the deficit of last year, which came to our net assets of just under $40,000 for the current year. The remaining pages, the next one is the cash flow, which shows kind of how the cash has gone in and out. The money comes in from grants and memberships, the money goes out on expenses. So that one is fairly straightforward, but it does show how the increase and decrease in comparison to the prior year with the grant received and the grant of 2020 not yet being received. The remaining pages are notes to the financial statements. These are required by the CPA of Canada. So I won't bore you with kind of what the notes include. It goes over how we do a lot of our assurance work, what is required, and how the association met this. I will ask you to turn to page 5, in which it shows the deferred membership revenue. So what was new in the fiscal year end of 2020 was that a 3-month extension was provided for memberships purchased after January 1st of 2020. Normally a membership lasts for a year. This year it was a 15-month extension. So that does account for a small change within the deferred memberships, which will be reported as the time is accrued that the memberships are earned. Finally, on page 9, we have the 2 different grants that were spent in the current year. So the grant of 2019 had a $262,000 balance from last year. This year, the amount recognized as revenue were the expenditures incurred of that grant, which left a balance of 0 as at May 31st, 2020. The second one is the new grant effective May 11th, 2020 for the $250,000 that is still to be received but has been agreed upon, and less $29,000 of expenditures that have been spent so far from that budget. We have a total remaining of $220,671 to be spent within the next fiscal year end. I do ask at this time if there are any questions. Again, the remaining point is more accounting notes. If there are any questions or concerns. Oh, you have the grant. Great. My copy did not. The following schedules have the grants and where the expenditures were spent within them. So Schedule F, this was the $250,000. I believe that's started in, or sorry, this is the May 11th of 2020. As you can see, this is what the budget's allocated for. So far, we've only spent $29,329. I believe the next page, if you want to scroll down one more. Is that the end? Okay, the previous pages were the older grants that have now been used up. Again, explaining the expenditures, where they were spent, as well as the budgeted amounts and how they were in comparison to the budget. Now I ask if there are any questions or concerns.
I will also ask if there are any questions or concerns. I see nothing in the chat, but is there anyone who has a question about any of the financials? Since we have the registered expert with us this evening. All right, hearing none, then we'll move to the next order of business. As I mentioned, our financials have been reviewed and approved by the board. So that moves us to item number 6 on our agenda, which is the appointment of our public accountant. And there will be a motion on the screen here momentarily that we continue to appoint MNP as our public accountant based on their continued support of our organization and good work, but certainly entertain someone to move that motion. Thank you, Corey. Appreciate that. Is there someone who would be willing to second? Thank you, Keith. Appreciate that. So heard the motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? I'll ask our scrutineers then to provide the results of the proxy vote.
Trevor, I declare the motion carried.
Thank you for that. We'll move then to board elections. And Scott did make the joke earlier that his, as scrutineer, he would be much more efficient than the vote that took place yesterday south of the border. So you can hold him to that standard that we should have results for you much more efficiently. So bear with me, there is some legalese here. But under section 27 of the bylaws, the board sets the exact number of board members within the range provided for in the Articles of Incorporation. The articles provide for a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 11 directors for the corporation. The board has set the number at 8. Under the Articles of Incorporation, the election of directors is by 3 different classes of members. So 1 board member is elected to the Class B members. Class B members consist of government entities, economic development authorities, and Indigenous groups. 1 board member is elected by the Class C members. The Class C members consist of universities and other post-secondary institutions. The directors in both of those classes, B and C, each serve for a 1-year term. The remaining 6 board members are to be elected by the Class A members. Under section 28 of the bylaws, those 6 directors are to be elected on a 3-year rotating basis. As a result, 2 of those 6 directors are to be elected this year. That allows for some consistency, some continuity, but also new blood from time to time with that rotation schedule. So I'd like to remind the members of the corporation that 4 directors who were elected previously have not yet completed their terms as directors. So first being Alison Amater, our current board chair, myself, Corey Keith, and Scott Exner. And while I can do so publicly, I will thank all of those individuals for their service to the organization and for their continued support of all the work that we do. So to summarize, there'll be 3 separate votes, 1 for Class B members to elect 1 director, 1 for the Class C members to elect 1 director, and then 1 for the Class A members to elect 2 directors for a 3-year term. And I know it's a bit anticlimactic because, as I mentioned at the beginning, the actual vote has already been completed by proxy. So we'll start with nominees for the Class B board position. I'll now ask for a nomination for the election of 1 director to be elected by the Class B members. And there is a motion that will be shared with you on the screen. And I would ask someone to move that nomination. Thank you, Peter. Is there a seconder for that motion? Thank you, Carlo. Are there any further nominations for director to be elected by the Class B members? I hear none, so I'll ask the scrutineers to provide the report on the proxy voting.
I declare Dan DeBelt a duly elected member of the board.
Thanks, Scott. I would now ask for a nomination for the election of 1 director to be elected by the Class C members. That motion will also appear on your screen momentarily. And I'll entertain a motion or entertain a mover to move that. Thank you, Corey. Is there someone who would be willing to second? Thank you, Corey. Are there any other nominations for the Class C director position? I believe there's nothing in the chat here. I hear nothing. So I'll again ask our scrutineer to provide the report on proxy voting.
I declare Sandra Morocco a duly elected member of the board.
Thank you for that, Scott. Finally, in terms of nominees for our Class A board positions, I'll ask for nominations for the election of 2 directors to be elected by Class A members. The wording of that nomination will appear momentarily. So there you can see that, Carlo Dade and Kimo Lucas. Is there someone who'd be willing to move? Thank you. I see Glenn and Sandra. Are there any other nominations? Hearing and seeing none, I would ask the scrutineers to provide a report on that proxy voting.
I declare Carlo Dade and Kimo Lucas duly elected members of the board, each for a 3-year term.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Scott. I appreciate all of those people standing to be re-elected, actually, and again, signing up voluntarily at their own free will and volition to be on this board and to work tirelessly as they have to continue the total world domination agenda, to Carlo's usual catchphrase, of plant protein from Alberta to the rest of the world. With that, I will invite our CEO, Mr. Dan Brewin, to provide a brief update on the organization and some of our progress, and to answer your questions. Dan. You might be muted.
There we go. Thank you, Trevor. Welcome, everybody. And appreciate everybody taking the time today to join in and help us out through this AGM. We're truly excited about the amount of participation and all of the interest that this sector has these days. And I really want to start, I guess, every one of us on this call certainly understands the opportunity that the plant protein space has. Every time it seems like that I open up a new article or reference or some sort of reference material, research material, it seems like the opportunity or the growth curve for the opportunity in the plant protein space is actually increasing, or it's getting steeper. So that's exciting stuff for us. The projections on the worldwide demand continues to grow and grow. So who are we? We are an organization, certainly, that connects companies, growers, investors, and researchers, etc., to help Alberta become leaders in the plant-based ingredient processing. So we ask you to truly use us as a resource. We feel like we're a very big part of the economic recovery, and you can even compare us to infrastructure. So we feel that PPAA is as important to the infrastructure of building the economy as our highways, railways, etc. So please use PPAA in that regard. Over the past year, and this started obviously long before I joined the group, but they had under the direction and very active board, which I am pleased to work with. It's great to have the participation that we do from the board. And so there was a number of events, both live and online. And so there was, we reached out to several individuals, through the events, we were able to contact a number of individuals. And so in total, there was about 1,100, just under 1,200 people. Some 200 of those, or 250 or so, in the live events. And then mid-March, we had to pivot like everybody else and go to the virtual events where there was over 900. So great participation there. And if you can see the one on extrusion technology with the whopping 262 attendees, that was a virtual event. Tremendous success on that one. And I guess the other point I want to make, I've heard countless times in my time here how well appreciated the newsletter is that PPAA develops and designs and puts out to our industry and to the members. And so I appreciate those feedback, keeps coming. We've got a great team that works on that, and I know they like to hear feedback so they can direct that in whichever way the members are looking for. So I also want to point out, and this is a big number, 83,000 page visits from our website over the course of time by 16,000 unique individuals from around the world. So truly, people are watching and looking for PPAA as a resource of information. So it's great to have that. As Shannon mentioned at the outset, maybe before some of you logged on, but we have 4 upcoming events, 3 in the remainder of this year, and then 1 later January. So we've got Plant Protein 101, Fractionation 101 again, doing some financing, and then a mental health event coming. So those are all available to register on Eventbrite. Please share that and register yourselves and help us create awareness to spread that word. So when is a good time to initiate and invest in the next plant processing or agro-processing project in the plant protein space? So the opportunity is now. It's not going to wait forever. And the capacity that's built today, for sure, will truly benefit the next generation and the generation after that. So COVID-19 has awakened many countries of the importance of internal food security. And some jurisdictions actually began that process or that strategy long before COVID-19. But others have since adapted and recognized the importance of doing so. And so supply chains are shortening. They're shortening in a fast way. And so we need to also think about that as Canada and Alberta. So whether it's for the purpose of shortening supply chains or simply to reduce the cost of transportation, plant protein is one output that makes sense to do the processing near where the crop is grown or where the source of the raw material. So what's next for PPAA? Well, we will attract investment into this sector of the industry. In fact, we are already working with investment attraction group within Alberta government. We'll continue to encourage innovation and connect entrepreneurs with investors. PPAA has begun a toll processing study to be used as a resource, a living tool that will identify who in the province is currently processing and what are they processing, and do they have any excess capacity to hire out to another organization that may be looking for some processing, etc. So, and PPAA is also in the process of working with a group of collaborative partners to improve access to capital. And we're helping to make new startups investment ready, and stay tuned, I guess, more for on that front. So that one's a big project, and we're looking forward to sharing some results there. So we're very hopeful that the provincial government truly sees this sector as an innovation opportunity, which has long-term benefit to the economy through increasing agri-processing and job creation. So please put in a plug for PPAA. Municipal governments, if you haven't yet, start getting ready with local infrastructure and permitting, etc. So I'm going to finish and get you to the guest speaker, but my last comment is, if consumers worldwide are asking for this product, plant protein or plant protein ingredients, and we already grow the commodities, why wouldn't we process it here? Let's make sure we capture that value. PPAA is here to help you do that, or help to get this sector moving. So thank you for joining us today, and I'm going to turn it back to Trevor. Thanks, Trevor.
Thanks very much, Dan. We appreciate the energy you've brought to the role and sort of reinvigorated some of our activities over the last few months as you've onboarded, and we appreciate all that you've done in that short time for our organization. So thanks for being with us tonight. This would normally be the part of the agenda where we would invite you to share some plant-based beverages that may or may not have undergone a fermentation process. Regrettably, we can't do that tonight. So instead, we have a fantastic guest speaker for you. It's my pleasure to introduce Patrick Morris. He's the CEO of Eat Beyond Global. Mr. Morris is an entrepreneur and capital markets executive, experienced in a number of diverse industries, including resource exploration, pharmaceutical cannabis, and finance. Over the last 15 years, he's taken a number of companies public through IPOs and reverse takeovers, and has successfully raised funds for micro-cap companies, as well as executed on corporate development strategies. So Patrick has created, co-produced Canada's first nationally syndicated radio show about growth stock opportunities, broadcast actually on 14 of the top news talk stations across Canada. So if you've ever had the chance to watch that show, you'll be very familiar with kind of his energy and his passion for what he likes to talk about. And prior to that, he also had 5 years experience actually in wine and sales importing. And so he can certainly, I'm sure, connect with the whole fermented plant-based beverage sector as well. So with that, Patrick, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and I'll hand it over to you.
Well, that's great. Thanks, Trevor. Super happy to be here. I wanted to thank Scott as well for his continued communication with our group and our team, and for the introduction to the PPAA. And thank you, the rest of you, for having me as your guest. So clearly you have a great talent pool here at PPAA, and you've all contributed great things to the industry in Alberta. And in my mind, more probably important to the future of food globally. So this is sort of the premise on which Eat Beyond Global was formed, was the future of food, and how, sorry, just 1 second, guys. I just lost my screen. Apologies. So, investing in good companies that will contribute to a more sustainable industry, because clearly In certain places in the world, it's just not working. So we created Eat Beyond so that we could provide retail investors access to the very best companies from around the globe that are innovating in the plant-based and alternative food sector. We're also focused on a broad cross-section of companies addressing the growing need for more sustainable and plant-based food options to benefit global health and food security. So Eat Beyond is the first investment issuer in Canada that's focused on identifying and acquiring equity in diverse global companies that are developing and commercializing innovative food product technologies. So this includes plant-based proteins, fermented proteins, cultured food tech and consumer packaged goods, as well as cell agriculture and other experimental projects. So we wanted to provide retail investors the ability to participate in the sector, which is largely private equity based and not readily available to the public. So we're providing that platform for the average investor. So my background, of course, as you heard, is more in the capital markets perspective, mining exploration, tech and cannabis, and now the future of food and the technology surrounding it. This is a whole lot more exciting to me than drilling holes in the ground, I must say. As you all know, it doesn't take much digging to familiarize yourself with the current global food situation and how it's not sustainable. Personally, I saw friends and family going to vegetarian or veganism, menus providing plant-based options coupled with the market's response to the likes of Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods of the world. Just some extreme excitement around the topic from a market perspective. And I think just generally speaking, people want to make sure they're putting good things into their body. So another turning point, of course, for myself was, a couple of good Netflix documentaries, such as Game Changers, What the Health, which I recommend to anyone that hasn't seen those. That was a good turning point for me. So, and again, my background is not necessarily in the food industry, but thankfully, we were able to attract an A-list advisory board that ultimately helps weed through and provide us with insight to make sure, we make good investments and, get our due diligence done on each of these companies. I'll give you a quick run through on our panel is Diane Zhang. She's got 29 years CPG experience. She was CEO of Hempco, as well as Aurora Cannabis. Alan Linder, 30 years at United Natural Foods in the States, major distribution company. For the retail side of things, Lloyd Lockhart, 40 years in retail grocery. He was founder of Super Value and Choices Market here that was eventually sold to Jim Pattison. I think there was roughly 1,000 employees at the time when they sold the company. So he's our retail expert. And we have Don Robinson, 30-year exec in the food industry. He was CEO of Mars Canada. So pretty deep group of advisors that are a whole lot more knowledgeable than I am in the space, but I'm just happy to be in their company. So we've made several investments so far, 3 in the public space, 3 public companies, one Good Natured. They have a plant-based packaging technology that's done great. And to date, we're 3 times our money on that one, which is a beautiful thing. Green Space is another Canadian company that's coming together, so we're roughly even on that investment. Very Good Butchers is our darling investment at this point. We were lucky enough to get in at their IPO at 25 cents. So currently, that stock was trading around $5 yesterday. So we're roughly 18 times the investment on that one. So these are just indications of the excitement surrounding the industry, and some more excited than others, but a great indicator. We're also invested in Just Foods out of San Francisco. So they make Just Egg. It's an egg replacement technology that is going gangbusters in the States, and they're expanding throughout the rest of the world now, which is very, very exciting. Also out of Singapore, Turtle Tree. They're a milk cell agriculture company. that is government backed, and they've won all kinds of awards, and they've been granted a lot of money by the government in Singapore. So we're seeing Singapore as real leaders in the space. So with that said, just in closing, and we can open up to questions if you like. I guess our message is, you know, fivefold. We'd like to advance human health in general. You know, 48% of deaths in the US are caused by heart disease and cancer, and a lot of that's coming out of the diet. Environmental inefficiencies, the amount of land taken to produce 1 pound of animal protein is 8 times more than that of a plant-based protein. Climate change, of course, animal welfare, and of course we want to create value for our shareholders in a $5 trillion global food industry. So, you know, we're a young company. We're just getting started. We're soon to be listed on the CSE in the next few weeks here. But as the only Canadian sort of investment company in this field, we've garnered a whole lot of media attention, not just from food-based media outlets, but we've had several articles in Forbes, some high-level articles. So we're getting a lot of attention. We're pretty excited. So I just want to leave it open to suggestions on how we can work together with you guys with the PPAA. And again, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Patrick, and consider yourself signed up. We would love to continue to work with you more closely. Are there other questions for Patrick? We do have this resident expert with us. Anything that people wanted to know?
Patrick, I had one. I was wondering if you could maybe give an idea of the range of